All right, everyone. Hi, welcome. Thank you for coming out and joining us for this virtual presentation. This is going to be a pretty basic introduction to genealogy resources that are available for free online and also through the library with your library card. So we're just going to cover a lot of basics here. And just before we go any further, there will be a more advanced class on Ancestry that is just focused on Ancestry.com and Ancestry.com only. That's going to be tomorrow afternoon. It's actually in person here at the library. And I believe there is still at least one spot available. So if anyone's interested in learning more about that website or that database in particular, feel free to check that out on our calendar and register. But let us get us started. So the very first thing you want to do when you're starting to look in your family history is start at home. This is really key, and you're going to find that if you do this first, you can save yourself a lot of heartache because a lot of times your family is going to have the best information that you can find. So some of the things that you might find amongst your relatives and family that you're not going to find anywhere else are family Bibles. Family Bibles were a huge record-keeping tool for families for many, many years. They would put records in the sort of front page, listing all the births and marriages. And for a lot of places, like New York, for example, official birth records only go back to 1880. So anything beyond that, your best bet can be to find them in things like these family Bibles that have these genealogies recorded in them. Photo albums also, we're not all as good record keepers as others, so some photo albums may not have a lot of information, but I know that my grandfather gave very detailed notes in his photo albums. In the picture, what the date was, what was happening, and you'd be surprised the gaps that you can fill in by looking through these. And so, yeah, so photo albums are a good resource. And sometimes they're held by, maybe there's one aunt or uncle who's sort of collected all the photo albums, and you can find all that information in one place. A lot of families write up family histories. Sometimes these are very informal. They're just typewritten. Sometimes they're actual published books, which I'll show you an example of in a moment. But a lot of times these things can't be found outside of your family home. Same with this, letters and diaries, like you're not going to find this anywhere besides your families. It's going to be very hard to find these in repositories unless you happen to have some very prominent family members. Scrapbooks, newspaper clippings, all this, business records. A lot of people's families had small businesses. You can find a lot of information about who was involved in those sorts of things. And, ask around, maybe it's a second cousin or a great aunt, but somebody might have all these records in their attic. And you could get right to the source and find a lot of information. So this is just a quick example of a family history. This is actually a book that is from my family on my mother's side. And it traces the lineage of this guy, Ferdinand Roger, who came over from France in the 1850s. And this book was published in 1981. And as you can see right here, there is a small entry on my mom. This book is about 400 pages long, and it covers many branches of the family that don't connect to us. But we do have our entire, side of the family that goes back to this particular gentleman. We all have entries. So this is the entry that was put in for my mom. And you can see it's got all this detail. It even talks about where my father, works or worked at the time. Hold on just a moment. Karen, we're just beginning. We're just starting to talk about the very first places to look for family history stuff. So that's what we're doing at the moment, and we're going to get into the databases in a little bit. So this is just an example of a family history, and what they might look like is just an entry. These are often self-published, and you might find them elsewhere. Sometimes we do have a section in the library that has family histories that have been published like this, but a lot of times they're really just sort of handed out within the family. So it's best is to go to those folks first. Another example of something that would be a good resource are baby books. This was something that my father handed me about a year ago that he just found lying around. And it was something that my grandparents had put together right when I was born. And my grandmother had gone in and she'd filled in all of this genealogical information on these questions. And so instead of spending hours researching, these people, I had it all right here in front of me. And it was a really great place to start. So look around your houses and in your family's houses for things like these if you're really just getting started. There's a good chance that somebody in the family in the past has been interested in genealogy work and they've done a lot of the research already, and you can save you a lot of time. Just a few tips, because it can get really easy to get scattered with this stuff pretty quickly, because you're looking into a lot of different branches and a lot of different lineages. So here's a couple tips to just stay on track. You want to record the person that you're looking for and like stick to it. You want to write down all of the books that you looked in to find that person, or the sources that you went to, the libraries that you called. If you came up with something that seems contradictory or questionable, you want to make a note of that, because a lot of times what happens is you'll be researching a certain line for a while and you'll kind of hit a dead end and you're not really getting anywhere. And so you'll stop and you'll start working on a different line. And then in 6 months or a year, you go back to that original one. But if you don't have detailed notes, you can end up redoing a lot of your old work, calling the same places and asking. And if you have all that information, like I already looked here, I know it's not there, it can save you some time and some anguish. So make note, be like, all right, I already called these people. They said they didn't have any records. I can just move on from that. There's a lot of places that have created different logs like this that can help you organize your information. So this is just an example from Family Search, and you can see the various formats that it's got. So here you put, where you're looking, who you're looking for, what's the date that you looked it up, whether you found anything. You can see here, nil, nothing. Here they found this record from the census record for this people. And it just helps you keep track, because the more involved you get, like the more I'll see people come in and they've got these big binders and they're sort of sorting through and they're not sure if they looked up this or that. But if you set up one of these sheets for each person, and then you log all of the records that you searched for that person, it's all in one place, and you know that you've covered all your bases. There's a couple of simple formatting things that people will put out. Obviously, you can do things however you would like. These are just sort of the standards, but the main thing is that you're always consistent. So they recommend that you record names always as first, middle, last, not last, comma, first, nothing like that, and that you record women by their maiden names, because that is the easiest way to go backwards. If you only have a married name, that's only going to get you to her marriage. And if you want to research her family beyond that, you're going to need the maiden name. So you can put in parentheses what her married name is, but you want to record women by their maiden names to help you trace back a little further. This is the standard for dates. It's sort of an international standard. Again, if you prefer to do month, day, year, that's fine. Just make sure that you're always doing it the same way every time. And if you find a letter or something, you want to transcribe everything word for word, including any misspellings or grammatical errors, because you're trying to preserve the integrity as much as possible, and you don't want to put any of your interpretation into whatever it is that you're transcribing. So the most important thing is to just put it all down as is, and you can add clarifications and brackets. And yeah, I know I've said this before, but this is the main thing: consistency, consistency, consistency. You can do it however works best for you, but you want to make sure that you do it the same way every time. So, okay, now we're going to move on to, we're just going to talk about some of the freely available, no money, no library card, no anything required. These are really good places to start. So the first one we're going to talk about is Find a Grave. We'll also talk about Family Search and FultonHistory.com. So Find a Grave is it is a crowdsourced website, similar to Wikipedia. It is just for graves and memorials and obituaries, though. Anyone can contribute to this. Anyone can use it. You can create an account, but you don't have to use it to search. This is the website right here, findagrave.com, and this is the page that you'll see when you click on that. It's fairly simple. You just plug in whatever information you have. If you happen to know where the cemetery is that you're looking for, you can put that in, or you can just put the name, year born if you have, year died if you have. So I just did a little test search. This is using my grandmother. So I did search using her married name because that's what she would be buried under. So what I put in here was I put her first name and her last name, the year of her death, and the place where I knew her to be buried. I did not know the cemetery, but I knew that she was buried in Missouri. And lo and behold, there's the result for her. It's Patricia May Hess Green. And as you can see, this record has a picture of the gravestone, her name, her birth and date, and then the cemetery information. And if you were to click on the link right here, it brings you to a fuller record. And some of these have quite a lot of information. Some of them have less, but this one shows you the picture of the headstone, all of the information of her birth and death. And then there are also links down here to several of her family members. And this is where Find a Grave can become a really good resource, because not only do you find the person that you're looking for and you can get a little bit of that demographic information, but it can start sending you down links to other family members. So here it's got her parents' information on here and all of her siblings. And I did not take a screenshot of it, but I know that if you click on her brother Donald Hess's link right here, it also has a copy of his obituary. Those tend to be for people that have died more recently, because those obituaries tend to be the ones that are online and more readily available. But it also depends, if somebody who's been really invested in doing their family history is participating in Find a Grave, they might put quite a lot of information on here that they've found and put it out there for people to discover. So it's just a really good first place to check. If you're looking for someone and you don't have a lot to go on, you can just do, sort of general areas, names, dates. This is what the advanced search field looks like over here. It's just got a couple more options for what you can do. If you want to search memorial ID, you're probably not going to have that. That's Find a Grave's record, but if somebody somehow gave you the record, you could search that way. And then you can use all these different filters. If you only know a nickname, you only have a partial name. They've got a little clue here for some various search tips if you're having trouble getting results. You can use a question mark or the asterisk as a wild card. It replaces a letter. Some sort of simple search tips. And then for both the year and the born and died, you can see there's this drop-down menu where if you're not exactly sure on the dates, you can just sort of estimate, like I think it's around 1860, or it's somewhere between 1860 and 1870. And you can do this plus or minus up to 25 years, or even put unknown, although that might make your search a little too broad. But those are just different ways to refine your searches in Find a Grave. And as I mentioned briefly, you can contribute as well if you are getting into the process and you're going around and you're taking pictures of gravestones and you want to start entering information. You do need to create an account in order to upload information, but it's free, it doesn't cost anything. And you just go and register with your email, and then you can upload information. Because it is crowdsourced, that does mean that some of this stuff needs to be taken with a grain of salt, just like anything that's crowdsourced. But it can be at least a good avenue to start to give you some idea. And a lot of these are a lot of the information on here has been projects by various classes, sometimes college classes, sometimes Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts, where they will go to a cemetery and they will sort of systematically go through and take pictures and record the information on the headstones and then upload them. I think it's it's been some Eagle Scout projects and stuff like that. So there are people that are working on it in a more systematic way. And it's, it's been around for a long time and it seems to be growing all the time. So great place to start. Another free and freely available database is Family Search. Family Search is run by the LDS Church. And you do need to create an account with them, but it is free. There's no charge for it. You just, again, need to enter your email address and create a login account. I've had this account for many, many years. I don't get any literature or anything from the LDS. Every now and then they'll send an email that's about Family Search. But other than that, they don't, there's a pretty big firewall between what they're doing here in the church. So you don't have to worry about giving them your information. That's what I'm getting at. And this is what their homepage looks like right here at Family Search. And what you want to do if you're looking for genealogy stuff is you go right here to search, and you can either just search everything or you can choose something more specific: records, image, family trees. And that would bring you to, so this is the search of records, and it's a similar sort of format. You enter in a name. In this case, I used my grandmother's maiden name, and we're just going to see if Family Search has anything on her. Their collection is hit or miss. I have not found much luck for my personal family tree in here, but I know other people have really found quite a lot. So this is what the search field looks like. And right here, you can see these little check boxes, and under there's options similar to that on Find a Grave, where you can sort of say exact or similar, sounds like, and change your fields a bit. So for this, under Patricia Hess, birthplace Missouri, no results in Family Search. So I've not, like I said, I've not had a ton of luck when I've looked in here, but it's a good place if you're just sort of running through the various sites that you want to look through. It's worth it to give it a shot in there because you might find something that is really helpful. Another free site is this site, fultonhistory.com. This is mostly newspapers, and it's mostly New York. It's not exclusively. There is some Canadian, Pennsylvania, and he is expanding. But it is basically the project of this man right here, Thomas Chernitsky. And he just sort of methodically goes through it and finds libraries that will loan him microfilm, and he digitizes the papers, makes them keyword searchable, and uploads them to this site right here. This is what the search feature looks like. It's like I said, it's a pretty simplistic site. Not a lot of bells and whistles to it. But if you've got family that's anywhere in New York area, it's worth coming in here and just giving it a shot. There's not a lot of advanced search features. I would recommend for this and for any newspaper or keyword search that if you're looking for a proper name, you put it in quotes like I've done here. Otherwise, you're going to get every instance of Patricia and Green in this entire database, which you do not want. And there are some other options here that you can use. Fuzzy searching means that literally the letters are kind of fuzzy, which happens a lot in digitizing microfilm. And this helps the computer be like, I know it's not exactly the word that you put in, but it looks kind of like it. Same with phonic and a couple different synonyms. But for the most part, this is pretty simple. You just plug in names and see what you get. So when I plugged in my grandmother's name, because she did live in upstate New York for quite some time, these are the results that I got. I got 60, so it's a lot to sort through. And I just kind of looked through the first page and I could see that none of these are going to be related to my family. But if you have a good idea where someone lived and you can just kind of look at the paper that these things are coming from, and you're like, oh no, I know that they lived there or they were near there. You can click on the link and it'll show you the actual screen cap of the newspaper article that the name appeared in. And it's not going to get you birth records or marriage records or death records, but I have found that in rounding off the edges of genealogy, the newspapers really are some of the more interesting sources because they give some character and personality. A list of dates and names is not telling you the story of your family. But if you can find some, records in the social pages of somebody's anniversary or somebody took a trip, and especially in the early 20th century, you see a lot of that stuff in the newspapers, things that seem pretty mundane. So-and-so hosted a bridge club party and here's who all attended. And it can really bring some color and make their stories a little more 3D. So that's why I like to direct people to places like this, even though they may not find that meat and potatoes genealogy stuff. You might end up finding the stuff that is more interesting overall. Okay, and another place, and this is less of a resource for actual genealogical searches as much as it is a resource for learning about how to do genealogy, is the National Archives has this great page on their site. It's at archives.gov/research/genealogy. And in there, they just have, I guess I don't have another screenshot, but they have a lot of different, tutorials and tips. They've got some of those forms that I showed earlier to like free download that you can just, download and print out or fill out on your own. And just a lot of, so charts and forms. If you wanted to work on family trees, they've got some forms that you can use for that. And it's just a good way to sort of round out how to do these things. And if you do have family members that, were in the military or involved in the federal government, then you can certainly find some information in the National Archives on them as well. But I use this more as a tool for genealogists to learn more. That's why I'm directing you there, as opposed to a tool itself. All right, so now we're going to move on to the databases that we provide through the library with your library card. And there's three major ones that we have right now. We have Ancestry.com, we have Heritage Quest, and we have Newspapers.com. And so here's just a screenshot of our homepage. And the way that you would get to any of these is that you click right here on Learn in this drop-down menu, and there's two possible ways to get to them. You can go to the Online Resources and Databases page, or you can go to the Local History and Genealogy page, which will also have links. If you go right here to our online resources, you can either select by letter. So if you want Ancestry, it's right there under A's, and you can click on that. Or you can search by subject. We've got them all sort of divided up here, and there's a genealogy category. And if you click on this, it's going to take you to Ancestry, Heritage Quest, Newspapers.com. There's also a link to the Dutchess County Clerk Ancient Documents in here, which we'll talk about a little bit later as well. But so that's sort of a one-stop shop for all of our available databases. Okay. Somebody was asking for the links at Pokewood.org. Let me just go back a moment. Learn. So there's the link in the chat. And you can also just sort of explore around on our website. So the first one we're going to talk about is Ancestry. This is the one that people ask about the most because people just know about it the most. And for a period of time, it was available off-site with your library card, but they have since removed that. That was a sort of pandemic era special. So at this point, you can only access Ancestry by coming into the library and using either your own computer here or using one of our computers, either in the iCommons or on the main floor. There is no remote access for Ancestry. And so this is what the page looks like. And when you click on the link on our databases page, it will ask you for your barcode, and you're just going to punch that in, and it'll take you right to their homepage. And as you can see, there's a couple different ways that they give you options for how you want to search. There's the search bar up here where you can just search all categories. You can limit to these various specific kinds of records. They've also created some links here, like if you want to search city directories or you're looking into immigration, birth, marriage, and death records, you can click on those and they'll kind of take you to a more specialized search field. You can also take a look at the census records that are available. At some point in the year, we will have access to 1950, but it has not been released yet. So right now, 1940 is still the most recent census that has been fully released to the public. So if you say you go up to search, you click on that. And so this is kind of what your main search field is going to look like. And again, I threw in my grandmother here, and we're going to try a couple different options. So I tried it with her married name and a place which she lived in North Carolina and her birth year. And I picked exact on all of these because I know them all to be true. And so these are the results I get when I do everything exact with this specific set of information. I get that find a grave record that we already found, that is indexed in Ancestry. And then also a copy of her record in the Social Security Death Index and one of the city directories from where she was living in Sanford, North Carolina. So that's pretty good, but because we limited it so specifically, it's not a ton of records. So I went back and I removed place your ancestor might have lived, and I added in her birth and date, left the name the same, and tried again. And so still 3 results, but they're slightly different now. So we've got your Social Security claims and the death index and the find a grave, but it has taken out that Sanford, North Carolina city directory because I did exact and I didn't put anything there. So one of the things that I like people to take from this is that if you have a certain set of facts about someone, play around with your data. You know, put in everything at first, see what comes up. If you don't get anything, maybe you take this out, maybe you change it. So you have this spectrum from broad to exact, and you can slide it back and forth. Hold on, you can slide it back and forth and get a little more leeway. Now, if you go too broad, you're going to get a lot of results that are probably not related to the person that you're searching for. But if you're getting nothing and you want to try to open up your possibilities, you can play around with all of these. And obviously, if you don't have exact information on things like birth or marriage or death, you can do because basically the exact is, the between 5 and 10 years, similar to the way that Find a Grave was working on that. And just mix and match until you get something that looks useful to you. So this is one of the records that came up. So I just pulled it up. And this is the Social Security applications and claims. So this would be from when her parents filed, excuse me, sorry, for her Social Security. And there is no image on this one. Typically, if Ancestry has a copy of the exact document that you're looking for, there'll be a little thumbnail up here that you can click on and you can see the original document. And over here, you can also see the option to send these documents home. You can send it home via email, or you can print it out right here. And that way you can get access to, the original document and take a look at it itself. Okay, so now we're going to move on to Ancestry's sister, which is Heritage Quest. And it works in a pretty similar way. It's not exactly the same. One of the things that is the biggest benefit of Heritage Quest is that it is available offsite if you have a PPLD library card. If you have a library card from one of the other libraries, it's probably not going to work because this is one of the databases that is exclusive to us. But if you have that PPLD card, you can use this from any place that you have internet access. And it has a lot of the same information as Ancestry, and it's actually owned by the same company. ProQuest owns them both. So there is a lot of overlap. But Heritage Quest also has some of these different databases that they sort of put an emphasis on, such as the Freedmen's Bank record and the Indian census rolls, things like that, that are not as highlighted in Ancestry. And you can find them here on Heritage Quest. So this is what the homepage looks like. They do put an emphasis on census records. So again, you can search the census records here by a year, or you can go up into the search and search by a variety of different formats. So this is their search field. You've got immigration, military, city directories, wills and probates. And then the actual search field, again, very similar. You've got sections for, where they lived, birth, death, name, locations. So for this one, I just did a test run for my grandfather, whose name was Floyd. And so I put in his full name and a place that he lived for a long time, which was Glens Falls. And in this one, I'm searching family history books and city directories only. And up here, there's 7 results, all from Glens Falls. And you can see right over here, there's his spouse, Patricia Green. She's listed right in there. And these are the years of the city directories that are available. So I just clicked on one of these, the 1952 one. And you see all the information that's in that city directory, including occupation, which is one of the things that's really great about city directories. Census records sometimes list occupation, sometimes don't. It depends on how the form was created for that particular census. But for the most part, city directories will list both your occupation and often where you work as well. Not necessarily every single time, but a lot of the time. And that can be some nice data. Yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but we can only see the Ancestry page.
Oh, you're frozen. Okay. Let me stop my share and then to pick up where we left off. Sorry about all of that. So hopefully we're back to about where we were. So we're talking about Heritage Quest. And this is what the homepage looks like. And here are the various search options. And right now we're in city directories. And this is what the field looks like, similar to Ancestry. I'm testing out my grandfather here. And here we found several different records. And this is what ultimately the record looks like. And in this one, you can see, here's the thumbnail. So if I wanted to, I could click on this view and I'd get a full screen of the directory. So I can see the actual page and I can print that out and put it in my files and whatever I'd like to do with it. And so that's pretty much how that works. And like I said, once you figure out Ancestry, you'll figure out Heritage Quest. They work in very similar ways and have pretty similar content. But what you get the most out of is that Heritage Quest is available from home. And now one of the ones that I tend to like the most, even though again, it's not going to give you that traditional genealogical, official birth dates, marriage records, things like that, is newspapers.com. And what we have through the library is called the New York Collection through newspapers.com. And it includes the Poughkeepsie Journal / the Poughkeepsie Eagle News, which are the same paper under different names, from the time period of 1785 to 1922. Unfortunately, they have cut off institutional access beyond 1922. But fortunately, we have a private subscription that I have access to that accesses the paper's records altogether. So if ever there's something that you want to search in the newspaper and you can't, and it's at a date that you don't have access to, you can send me an email and I'm happy to run a search for you and see if I can find something. It also includes the Kingston Freeman. It includes the variations on the Times Herald record and all of that, so on and so forth, as well as many other New York State papers. So if your family is from New York, but they're not from Poughkeepsie, you can still use this database to get in there and find some good stuff. Again, this one has offsite access for PPLD card holders. Anyone can use any of these sites in the building. You don't even have to have a library card. We have a special database card that we can use to get you on to any of these databases when you're in the building. But if you want to use it from home, you would need that PPLD card. And this is what the homepage looks on when you click on that from our location. And it's a pretty simple interface. If you want to just search everything in the New York collection, you can just go right here and go to keyword. And again, like we were doing with Fulton, you're going to want to put names in, or any multi-word phrase, you're going to want to put it in quotations, because that will indicate that you're looking for those words right next to each other, not just anywhere on the page. Yeah, Kevin, if you want to, you can unmute yourself and ask your question.
You only have the New York collection, or is there another area you can go to if you want like a Pennsylvania paper or something like that?
We only have the New York collection. There's some searching that you can do without any access, but it really only will give you a snippet. It won't give you the full click through. However, I will say that if there's a specific place or person that you have in mind, I've found that the newspapers.com will offer subscriptions. Like we have a subscription to just the Poughkeepsie Journal. That's the one that we have. And it's pretty affordable. Sometimes they'll often trials like a free week. And then I think monthly it's like $6.99. So sometimes I know some people will just sort of like get it for a month, do all the searches they can in that paper, and then unsubscribe. So if you're looking for something outside of the New York area, you can either contact those libraries to see if they have someone that can do a search in them for you, or look around to see if maybe you could get a free trial for that paper or that area, and just see what you can see that way. So like I said, if you want to search everything, you just start right here. But you can also go up to papers right here and click on this, and it'll take you here. And then I usually just narrow it by Poughkeepsie because it's such an unusual word that you're not going to get a lot of false positives. And what comes up are these two papers, the Poughkeepsie Eagle News and the Poughkeepsie Journal, which are essentially the same paper at different times in its existence. It was called the Poughkeepsie Journal very early on. And then in the 1840s or 50s, it sort of switches over to the Poughkeepsie Eagle, and it becomes the Poughkeepsie Eagle for a long time. And then in 1960, it becomes the Poughkeepsie Journal again. So that's why it's listed as two different papers, but it kind of, so you can just sort of search in both of these. And since I don't have any family in the area that I could use as an example, so for this, I just chose to search in the Poughkeepsie Eagle News for Matthew Vassar because I figured I'd probably find some results. And this is just to give you an idea of what it looks like. And you'll see they'll give you this little snippet in the window with the word that you searched highlighted. And then over here, there is the date and the page and the whole citation. If, you know, sometimes you type something in and you've got thousands of matches because you're doing keyword searches. And so in that case, you can narrow it by date range. You're like, you know, I really only want to search for this 1 year or this 2 years. And you can just click, well, you can just click on that box right there and put in either a specific year, or you can choose a range and narrow your searches that way. And so I just clicked on one of the results for this Matthew Vassar. And here, this one was actually about the death of Mrs. Vassar. And this was her obituary right here. All right, and so now I'm just going to talk very briefly about DNA testing and how all of that works. So basically, there are these 4 different kinds of testing. When you're talking about the DNA testing available, you have a couple different options. One is what's called the Y-DNA, that only men can take this test. It only records the male lineage. And then similarly with the mtDNA, that's strictly the maternal line, although everybody can do it, but it only will follow your maternal line. Autosomal DNA, this is the most common one that you think about when you hear about DNA testing. This is what Ancestry will give you and some of the other sites. And it gives you your ethnic lineage, basically, and sort of lets you know roughly where in the world your heritage might be coming from. And then there's also the genetic testing, which is, you know, more common when we hear the 23andMe and some sites like that, that are going and they're looking for genetic markers for illness or, you know, various disorders or diseases. So these are the main varieties of tests that are available. These are the main companies that offer these tests. And this is the type of test that they offer. So Ancestry does autosomal, MyHeritage does autosomal, Family Tree DNA does all of these. So if you've already done this and you want to get a little more into it, start handing out tests to family members. That's Family Tree is the one to do it. There's another one called Living DNA, which does a sort of bundled one, which is all of these together. And 23andMe, which mostly does the genetic testing. The thing to know about the DNA testing and the results that you get is that a lot of your results are based on other samples as well. So the larger the database, the more accurate the results are going to be. And Ancestry at this time has the largest number of contributors. So, they're the ones that are able to sort of pinpoint, but it's all, in terms of naming the ethnicity, which we'll talk about in a moment or two, it is a little bit fuzzy how all of that works. And it may not necessarily go along with, what your family story has told you, or even, what your family, what is the case, because we're talking about genetics and people move around, and country boundaries and genes don't have anything to do with each other. Countries, you can say that you're from Ireland, but your genetics say that you're from Normandy, and so on and so forth. People move around a lot more, and country borders are not fixed. So limiting it to saying like, I'm from this country, like it's fuzzier than that. But it does give you a more interesting, idea. And also when you connect into something like Ancestry, and this is why people use it for genealogy, is that it starts connecting you to people that you are genetically connected to. And so what are the things, if you do take the Ancestry exam, which I did, many years ago now, I'm not sure how long back, they give you a sort of limited version of Ancestry that comes with the tests that you buy. You can't do a lot of genealogy stuff in there, but what you can do is build a family tree, and they help build that family tree with the genetic results that they have from other people and the trees that they have built. So you really want to build this tree on your own. You don't want to rely too much on the information that Ancestry is giving you, because that information is crowdsourced from other people's family trees. But it can be a good place to get some clues. Basically, anywhere here where you see there's a little green leaf, you can click on that leaf, and Ancestry will kind of tell you why they think this person belongs in this part of your family tree. And when, like this one where it says potential, like I have not added this person yet, but if I clicked on it, I could see who they think it is. And then if I have some independent research that backs that up, I can click OK and add it to my tree. Like if I already know my father's mother's name. So when they filled that in for me, I was like, yeah, I know that that's my father's mother. So it's okay. But I would say definitely don't just like, if they have their tree filled out and they're like, we're pretty sure that this person belongs here, double check, find another resource that lets you know that that person is on your tree. Because you're not dealing with authoritative sources here. You're dealing with some crowdsourced information. And these do give you like links to some of the Ancestry records sometimes, but sometimes they only link you to another family tree. And that's the ones that you really need to look into a little more deeply. And this is what I was talking about more with the fuzziness, is that Ancestry's results change all the time. About once a year, I get an email from them telling me that my profile has been updated. And what they're doing is they're taking all the new samples that they've gotten, and they're sort of recalculating where they think you're from based on the new data that's come in and where most of those people that have similar genetics are from. So in April of last year, this was my genetic layout, how they put it together. All pretty standard. This Norway right here, that it's at 8%. Nobody in my family will claim to any Norwegian heritage because we're Swedish, and I don't know if you know about those two, but we're not Norwegian. But it says so on here, and in fact, maybe 2 years before this, they were saying it was about 15 or 16% Norwegian, which was interesting. And then this one from last year also shows this little small subset over here to some community of Quebecois settlers that must have settled up here, that somehow got into the family line, and that presumably came down the Missouri River and settled where one of my grandfather's ancestors came from. But now if you look again, I just pulled this up today, and things have changed again. So now Norway's down to 2%, makes more sense. That's what the family story has always said. and it's putting a much higher percentage in the sort of Sweden, Denmark area. So it's fuzzy, it changes. It's not an exact science, borders are not real, and a lot of them are pretty recent. So they kind of, you get into this vagueness, like, you know, I don't know specifically of anyone that's from Denmark, but this area has a lot of travel back and forth and has for, you know, probably thousands of years. So the genetics are going to be similar. And another story, so that ancestor that we talked about a long time ago, Ferdinand Roger, he's from France. That was where he originated. He immigrated from France around 1850. But genetically, he's not showing up on here at all. And that's because it only takes a few generations for it to be possible for you to not have any genetic links to some of your ancestors, because of the way that, you know, DNA is like halved and split again. You can have someone that's in your family tree and not that far back, but there's not a genetic link anymore. So just a little bits and pieces about how that all works. And for the most part, these tests average around $100. I won't advocate for them or against them. It's really your choice. I know there's been a lot of talk about what the uses are for, and when you're putting this information into these big databases, and you don't really know what it's going to be used for, and that's something to think about, because that, you know, it's your data, and you're putting it in the hands of a corporation, so you got to make the choice if you feel okay with that or not. I obviously did it. Haven't really felt too much about it, but it's a personal choice, and the tests are not cheap. I will say that if you're interested in doing a DNA test and you're looking into it, I would say try to wait until maybe there's a holiday coming up, Mother's Day, Father's Day, things like that. A lot of times places like Ancestry will offer some, you know, 15-20% discounts on these tests around those holidays, and so you can maybe get a deal on it. All right, and so now I'm just going to talk really briefly about some of the physical materials that we have here at Adrian's for your searches. And now this is really going to be primarily for people that have family from Poughkeepsie or Dutchess County, because that is what our physical collection is really focused on. You know, with Ancestry and Heritage Quest, you can sort of go all over at least the country and maybe the world, depending on how updated the records are. But the stuff we have here is pretty hyper local. So it's just a list of the kind of things that we have in the room. We have this obituary index that we've been building on since 1871. It has all the obituaries that have appeared in the Poughkeepsie Journal. We also have the Poughkeepsie newspapers on microfilm. And again, we have that keyword searchable database, but because there is limitations to the timeframes, you can always look at the microfilm, and we have microfilm for some of the other Poughkeepsie papers that have not been digitized, like the Poughkeepsie Telegraph or the Poughkeepsie Evening Star. So if you know roughly the date or time that you're looking into, you can come in and look at the microfilm. We've also got the city directories on microfilm. Some of those are in the Ancestry databases, but not all. We also have print city directories in the local history room, which we'll get to in a second. We've got census records in print and microfilm. I wouldn't really recommend using these. I think you're better off using the databases for searching census records. It's just really difficult to look at them. We do have a whole section on family histories for local families. And we're always accepting donations. You know, if your family's from the area and you've written up something, it doesn't even have, you know, it could be 10 pages in a report cover. I'd happily put it in the collection because people are always looking for that stuff. We've got church and cemetery records, which get to be more and more important the further back in history that you go. And we have got some city and county histories that, you know, you might not find information about your specific family members in books like that. But if you're researching an area that your family was from, it can give you some nice background, help you sort of understand what life might have been like for them in the place that they were living. We also have several genealogical publications that don't get a ton of use, but if you've got family that's from the New England area, we subscribe to the New England Historical and Genealogical Register. We also subscribe to the New York Genealogical and Biographical Record, and we have all of the Dutchess County Historical Society yearbooks. which, while they are not super well indexed, have a ton of really good information about local folks. And I think actually they have a lot of theirs digitized online as well at this point. And I think the older ones is open access to anyone, whether or not you're a member of the society. And if you're searching in our catalog, anything in the genealogy room, the call number begins with GEN. All right, moving on to the local history room. Similarly, we have a marriage and death index that goes back to 1826. We have surname files. So these are just file folders that are filled with genealogical information based on last names. And we have two collections. One is the sort of general local history collection, which is materials that over the years have been collected by either staff doing genealogical work for patrons, or patrons have donated the information and we've put it on file. The other collection, which is larger and more robust, is the Clifford Buck collection. He was a local genealogist. He worked for probably 50 years in the area doing genealogy for hire. And when he passed, he donated his entire collection to the library. So we've got, 8 or 10 drawers full of these files based on the last names. And it includes all of the correspondence that he had with the folks. You can kind of see the context of the information. It's not just a list of, say, deeds from the county clerk's office. You can read the letter that was written to him and the letter he wrote back saying what he could find and what he couldn't. So again, if you've got family that's been in the area for a while, there can be some really good stuff in the surname files. We've got the city directories in print. We try not to lend those out too much if it's available on the microfilm, because they are pretty fragile, some of them. But if you want to look at city directories from 1961 to 1992, you have to go to the print because we don't have those on microfilm yet. We also have local telephone books and cross-reference directories, which are directories that you can look up by phone number or address. So say you moved here and you wanted to look up who lived in your house, you can look up by address in the Hill Donnelly and see that name. You can also do that in the city directories, but there's a gap. The city directories ended in 1992, so anything beyond that, you'd have to get the Hill Donnelly. We've also got records of social clubs and civic organizations, Sanborn insurance maps, and maps of Poughkeepsie and Dutchess County. And these are less useful for genealogy and more useful for people that are researching their homes. But again, if you know that your great-grandfather was a part of the Grover Cleveland Club and you want to look up, see if there's anything there, we've got a box for that. And you can pull it out and see if his name shows up in there. So those are just some of the things that are available in the local history room. Okay, and outside of the room, a couple places to look for if you're looking locally. The Dutchess County Historical Society, they've got a great website. I don't think I wrote it down here, but I think it's just dchsny.org. The Genealogical Society is not quite as active, but they do have some people around that if you're stuck on something, you can give them a call and they can maybe do some research for you. The Latter-day Saints, they're also local, and they are actually co-located with the Genealogical Society, or at least they were the last I had heard. So that can be kind of a one-stop shop. Although I think the Genealogical Society is going to be better equipped to help you, whereas Latter-day Saints, I think they just kind of set you off with some microfilm and you're on your own. If you're not local, look into the local historical societies for the areas that you're looking for. It can be frustrating because a lot of these places are, volunteer owned and operated, so they don't necessarily have regular hours. It can be hard to get people on the phone, but just keep trying. And if you can find an email or a web contact, do that first, because a lot of times there might not be someone manning the phone, but there's someone checking the emails. So it's always good to give those folks a call and see. And then there's also the Dutchess County Clerk's Office. Now, I'll warn you right now, the clerk's office is not that interested in doing genealogical research for you. If you call them and you're not local, they will definitely tell you to find a genealogist to come in and do the work for you. But they do have online this ancient document portal, which is fully keyword searchable. And again, if your family's been in the area for a long time, this has legal documents from the Court of Common Pleas from 1721 to 1786. And there's just some really interesting stuff in there. It's mostly court records, but you can just type in names and see what pops up. and get some more of that, that local color. You find out that your great-great-great-great-grandfather was suing someone because they didn't pay for a horse or something, like the kind of details that make history a little more exciting and enlivening. All right, so that's pretty much it on what I've got. I just wanted to put up here some of our upcoming programs. So like I mentioned before, tomorrow we do have that introduction to ancestry.com. It's going to be here at the library in the computer lab at 1:30 p.m. On March 9th, my colleague Shannon Butler is going to be giving a talk on the Delano family and the roots of their wealth in the opium trade. So that ought to be an interesting one. That one's going to be at Boardman Road on March 9th in the green room. And then on April 6th, she's going to be giving a presentation on some of the beautiful historic buildings in Poughkeepsie that are no longer with us, that have been torn down. And she's been working on blog posts for the past couple of years that will highlight a building here and there. And so she's taken those and she's putting them together into a program that will be on April 6th at Boardman Road. And the registration is not available for that one until March 25th, but I figured I'd just give you a heads up that it's coming. If you're interested in more genealogy programs, we do have several slightly more advanced topics that have been pre-recorded from previous programs and that are available on our YouTube channel. This is our YouTube channel, PokeLib01, and there's a section on that page that's called From the Local History Room. And there's a whole wide variety of videos up there that cover just stuff in the room, interesting history bits. Shannon's done a lot of them. But there is also a series of genealogy classes that a wonderful genealogist named Sarah Gutman gave for us last spring that we've recorded and they have up there. And so these are the 3 topics that's getting the most out of your Ancestry.com DNA results, how to use census records, and then she did a session just on the particular difficulties of finding women in the genealogical record because they can be very difficult to find. So if you're interested in exploring something a little more advanced than what we've talked about today, head over to that YouTube channel and you can view any of these on there. There is also a really wonderful one that Joan Kelly did about a year ago that's specifically for African-American ancestors in Dutchess County. So if you're looking for those folks, because they can be really difficult to find as well, she's got a whole presentation up in the same page on our YouTube channel that sort of delves into the hows of that and how to help people find local records because we have a long history of Black folk here and they just have not been prioritized, and we're trying to change that because they're part of our history. Everyone's part of our history. So check that out if you have the time. And that's really all I've got for you guys. My information is up right here. That's my email address. That's Shannon's email address. You can also just email at localhistory@pokelib.org if you can't remember our names. And that's my phone number and extension.